Yeah, so how the Koch network hijacked the war on COVID. That's the name of the piece. So again, we see the Koch brothers as the main villain in a narrative, which is hardly shocking. You opened the discussion, though, about the situation with a school in Michigan that's not well known. Tell us a little bit about that.
So the school is Hillsdale College, and it's really, really part of Trump world. It's been a conservative institution really since its founding in 1844. Its president chaired Donald Trump's 1776 commission, which,
Right.
as you may remember, was the response to the 1619 project. Like, oh my gosh, we have to teach kids the good stuff in American history, otherwise they might have a well-rounded view. Um,
Of
so
reality.
so the school's president, Larry P. Arnn, chaired that commission, and they came out with a report, a curriculum recommendation for how to teach that sort of patriotic view of American history.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So now Hillsdale College has started an Academy for Science and Freedom, which they say is to beef up the discussions and instruction of how scientific inquiry should be in light of the pandemic, which saw scientific inquiry disappear and groupthink take hold, and what they're really referring to is the mockery, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
and dismissal of the ideas of a fringe group of scientists who
Right.
recommended that countries adopt a strategy of herd immunity through infection and only
Right.
focusing protection on the most vulnerable.
Let's talk about that for a second, Walker, because that is really alarming to hear. Science progresses off of consensus peer review and being checked, right? So all of those things are still in place. The idea, and you're right, they're fringe, right? These are fringe opinions. And in peer review, most of these guys have been checked and told that they're wrong. Herd immunity is never going to be reached through natural, what they call natural immunity, right? This is the idea that if enough people get infected, our bodies will be able to fight the virus. But this is really dangerous because this is a novel virus, meaning it crossed over from animals into humans, and we have absolutely no defense for it. So this is very dangerous, in my opinion. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, we know that this strategy doesn't work because everywhere that's tried it has seen more infections, more deaths, and instead of herd immunity, we've gotten beta, delta, omicron, and then
We're going through the Greek alphabet.
and then all the variants in between. And who knows
Yeah.
if omicron is the last variant we're going to see?
I
Like,
know there's one out of Peru now that's not here yet that I'm being told is even more dangerous.
people don't want to hear this, but like
Right.
we're still in this pandemic,
We
and
are.
that's just the reality. Um, the people we're talking about specifically are Sunetra Gupta, Jay Bhattacharya, and Martin Kulldorff. They are the three primary authors of a document known as the Great Barrington Declaration, which was signed in Great Barrington, Massachusetts, um, and it was signed at a conference hosted by the American Institute for Economic Research. And that sounds very official on its face. That sounds legitimate. Great Barrington Declaration from the
Yeah.
American Institute for Economic Research, but it turns out that is a Koch-linked group,
Right.
um, and all of those doctors, because through this group, and then Bhattacharya and Kulldorff have their own other connections, are connected in Koch world.
And they're also connected to this Hillsdale College in Michigan, correct?
Yes, Jay Bhattacharya and Martin Kulldorff are now two of three principal fellows that this new Academy for Science and Freedom is hosting. The other is a man by the name of Scott Atlas. Now, Scott Atlas was Donald Trump's COVID advisor, a neuroradiologist with no public health experience, who found the Great Barrington guys and their message so compelling that he promoted it in the Trump White House. Now, you may remember that in the early months of the pandemic, Trump was calling to reopen as early as March 24th.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "We're going to be open by Easter." And when the Great Barrington Declaration came out in October 2020, he started talking about, like, oh, herd immunity. We're gonna reach a herd mentality, is what he called it. Um, And
That's right.
he really loved the idea because it promises a quick fix to the pandemic, right? You don't have to do anything. You don't have to disrupt the economy. All you have to do is just let everything get back to normal. And
Right.
if we just do that and protect the elderly, we'll be okay. Now, protecting the elderly when the virus is ripping through the population and reinfecting people, new variants are reinfected, it's not possible. It doesn't happen.
No.
It hasn't
No.
happened. And these guys are still insisting that they would have reduced the death toll.
It's ridiculous.
You know, the public health measures that they rail against have been found to have saved millions of lives worldwide and cut the spread in the United States. These
100%.
their attitude has been criticized as borderline eugenics, as called it, which I agree with wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I do too. I do too.
They've called it. Justin Feldman from Harvard's FXB Center for Health and Human Rights called it social Darwinism, and even the head of the World Health Organization called it unethical. So we're not talking about people who are thoroughly in the mainstream who are being silenced. We're talking about a fringe group of scientists who somehow found access to the highest office in the United States, and also, by the way, in Great Britain, the Prime Minister Boris Johnson was also enamored with their ideas.
Yeah. And Sweden, I hate to mention, I think took a meeting with these folks, didn't he? The prime minister from Sweden.
The head of their public health
Okay.
took a meeting with them. They've had access to the highest levers of government, and they've used it to promote this sort of this monstrous policy. And this, I mean, it's no surprise that that Charles Koch, sorry, David Koch is dead.
Yeah.
It's no surprise that Charles Koch is enamored with these kinds of ideas. And by the way, Koch Network is also now funding the research of Professor Emily Oster of Brown University, who is, as everyone may know, an economics professor, but also a big advocate for reopening schools, and who has promoted pretty unusual, let's call it unusual, ideas about the robust immune systems of children, and treat your kids like a vaccinated old person and enjoy your hot vax summer. Like somebody who was pushing to get teachers back into classrooms before they were vaccinated, saying the risk was very low. And then, of course, when we saw Delta arrive in places across the country, one of the first places they spread was schools.
Yeah.
It's schools. So,
of course.
I mean, all of these people with these horrendous ideas being promoted by this network,
Right.
by is connected to an oil billionaire who might just have been upset about the fact that the pandemic caused oil demand to drop by 9% in 2020.